everybody. Welcome back to the Taking Chances podcast with Shaun Coe. I got a very special guest today. I've been looking forward to reconnecting with this gal for quite some time. I've got Kayla King coming in to me live from Medford, Oregon. Kayla, how you been?
I am awesome. Thank you so much for having me on this podcast. I'm excited to reconnect with you.
I'm super stoked to reconnect. Kayla, when was, and honestly, I've been trying to remember myself. I know it's been about 2 years ago. We're both kind of coaching each other through this entrepreneur thing. And I was getting ready to head back to visit my dad with dealing with cancer. But I think it's been at least, I don't think I've spoken to you since I left Denver a couple years ago. Is that correct?
Yeah, that actually sounds about right. It has been a while because, for context, we were living in the same apartment building. And then as soon as we kind of parted ways from that, we just lost touch and didn't really connect. So
yeah, Kayla and I got forced into a good connection right before the pandemic. Then the world shut down. And I think everybody that was in our condo during that time that was an entrepreneur tended to just gel together for a little while. Yeah. So I know what you've been up to, but I really want to give you a chance to tell everyone else, because I think your passion project, like, gosh, I know so much about it, and there's a little bit of correlation between my background. Yep. But fill me in about MyMeal. Where are you at today, and kind of walk everyone through kind of your vision and how you got started, because I also know how much it's evolved from the start, but just kind of walk people through why it is you're doing what you do.
Yeah, I would love to. And it's a great opportunity to share it with you as well, because I know it has evolved a ton since when we last talked. But MyMeal is an app for people with food restrictions to find safe restaurant meals. And my really big passion behind it was I was diagnosed with celiac disease when I was 9 years old. So I've had to be obsessed with food and constantly looking at food labels basically my whole life. And I eventually became a nutrition coach, started coaching others. And then through that process, I learned that there is this really huge problem from a mental health perspective that nobody is talking about, or it's rarely being talked about. And so there's all these like medical products out there or medical treatments that are being discussed, but on a day-to-day basis, until we're able to find a cure or a treatment for it, this really impacts people's livelihoods. And so that was the part that I always found really interesting, because growing up, my parents would just not let my celiac get in the way of anything that I did. They would, encourage me to travel and eat out. Like, I've been to 36 plus countries. And so that's where I really wanted to help people.
I finally passed you, but keep going. I don't want to interrupt. That was like my biggest mission when I first met you. I was like, the first girl I met that's been to more countries than me. Yeah. But Kayla, to hop back into that too, because I think, we both, when we met each other, we were both so passionate about fitness and health. And I think it's funny how we're both in different fields now, but we both kind of came into the same category from a different start point. Yeah. But talk to me a little bit about, the challenges of eating out when you have celiac. And again, I know how much of a foodie you are, but I think even me being a restaurant operator my entire life, you filled me in on so much data I didn't realize. And then again, I think you did a very good job of connecting the passion and the opportunity, and also to the fiscal opportunity for the restaurants that are signing on for you.
Absolutely. Yeah. So there is a huge opportunity in the market to make catering to these people a competitive advantage for a company. So just as a whole, the industry is missing out on $202 billion because somebody with a food allergy only eats out about twice a month, where the average consumer eats anywhere from 5 to 6 times a week. So there's a huge, massive gap there on, an opportunity to help people feel safe and therefore help them eat out more often.
I know some of these challenges, Kayla, but I think you can even help extrapolate for those that don't have some food allergies too. Like, I know how much you love food, but how scary is it to order out? And again, I think the worst thing is that the person that feels that they're informed to these issues, but they only have enough information to really harm somebody. And I feel that that's most restaurants these days, unfortunately.
Yeah. So the way that I think is helpful to describe it is somebody with a wheelchair ramp. Like, that's a more visible disability that we can see. It's like not having... I like where you're going with this. Yeah. It's like not having a ramp for them. And so if you don't have a ramp for them, it's going to be really, really hard for them to go into your restaurant. Or if somebody is blind, like the frail, having that accessibility for them is really important. So that's the way that you need to think about food allergies and celiac, is it is a disability. And so if there are not things in place in order to help us feel safe, then it's not accessible for us. And so when people go to restaurants, like the typical experience, and I talk about this all over my Instagram, is you'll play the game of 20 questions. So you'll walk in and you don't know what your experience is going to be like. So you're having to ask how everything is cooked. What are the ingredients and everything? And I know from a restaurant perspective, because I've worked in restaurants as well, that this feels like a nuisance because you're in the middle of service. You don't want to answer 20 questions. But that is exactly why MyMeal exists, because we want people to be able to have those questions at their fingertips so that you're not having to go through all the answers to them. Because from a consumer perspective, you need to have those answers in order to feel safe and confident eating there. But from a restaurant perspective, you don't want to sit there in the middle of service answering all of those questions.
Well, and boy, you've touched on so much. And even I want to go back to the ADA first, so to go back to that wheelchair example, I mean, the level of thought that goes in even when we're designing buildings, because for the audience, I've done over 100 new store openings specifically in hospitality. One of the last steps before we get our TC to actually enter the building is walking through with an ADA code and making sure is that curb the right amount so the wheelchair can get over. So just the level of thought that goes in to make sure that all the consumers that get in. And Kayla, I really feel like your group has exposed a massive opportunity here where the thought process just wasn't put in, but it's because no one's really been there as a pioneer saying, hey, look at. And what I love that you did too is you didn't come in with just a problem. I think you came in with an opportunity saying, look, if we fix this, this is the potential new vertical revenue you could have, because all these folks like me want to eat out and we just don't want to be afraid to die. So how did, I know why you started MyMeal, but how has it been evolving? Because I remember the conversations when you and I were first kind of coaching one another. And I think I was challenging quite a bit of just how are you going to monetize that? And what I loved you coming back was you never cared about that, and now I've been going through some of those endeavors myself too. And you just knew how much of an opportunity was there and a problem that needed to be fixed. So how has this evolved since I last chatted with you? I see that you're signing on new restaurants, but have you kind of beaten down that door? Because I know if the servers don't want to talk about this, I'm sure a lot of the owners don't want to hear you coming in saying, look, I know we could do more revenue, but everything you're doing is wrong. So how did that work out for you?
Yeah. So your encouragement was definitely super helpful in the beginning days, because especially during COVID, I just got lots of no's. Go away. Sure. We don't want to talk to you. And so I kind of just kept pushing on and learning more about the restaurant industry. So very shortly, I can't remember if this was during or after, but I did go back into the restaurant industry to work in operations for a little bit. And that was at the encouragement of a few people around me, probably you, and then also some restaurants that I was being mentored by. And so that's what I did. I got a server position, did that for a while, popped between 2 and 3 restaurants, then ended up being a personal assistant.
You lived the life.
Yeah, then
you lived the life. You got to taste it.
Yeah, and I was a personal assistant for an owner, which taught me a lot about how an owner thinks and what are the problems that she or he occurs on a daily basis. And then that led to a front of house manager role. So then I got a little bit of management experience, did all of our toast menu management, our events, our catering. So I kind of got a very well-rounded experience in a very fast period of time, which was super, super valuable. And then the actual restaurant that I was working for, they happen to be super allergy friendly. So they're a paleo restaurant and have people with food allergies come in all the time. That's a part of their competitive advantage. And so she was actually really helpful in developing one of the first iterations of our filterable allergy menus that go on our app. And so she kind of helped fund some of that, gave her feedback, still gives her feedback, helped us design it. So she was super valuable in kind of taking me to the next level. And that gave me the confidence to go back out and reach back out to restaurants. Also, timing was different. So it was honestly just lots of persistency and learning and educating myself.
But rather than, pivoting from your idea, because it was the start of the pandemic, and this is when we launched Human Capital Resource, and I think we both had a ton of conversations about this. Hey, we can rest on our laurels and we can, close our dreams down, or we can, use this time wisely for ourselves.
Right.
We've scaled about 800% since the last day I saw you. And I think that the fantastic thing that I've seen you do as well is you went back into the ground floor, though, trying to understand the pain point as both the owner and the front of the house staff that's going to be delivering this message.
Right.
Rather than just trying to go here and saying, hey, I've got an issue as this consumer, you put yourself in both ends there. So you could kind of see how everything played out there. What was your largest takeaway from that? Because Kayla, that's so amazing on so many levels. And I wish more CEOs that had 20 years on both of us thought this way, but I'm sure you got so much out of that. What was some of your takeaways from those endeavors?
Yeah, so the shift honestly was really important because when I was talking to you, like when we were going back and forth, you were trying to get me to understand the restaurant perspective. And so I would be like, oh, like, how about I reach out to these massive chain restaurants? And you were like, I don't know if you're ready for that. And as like a young entrepreneur, I was like, no, I'm ready for it. Let me in. And I get it because now I am at a point where I'm a little bit more ready for that. But that's because I've learned with hundreds of small restaurants what they need. And so my biggest takeaway in that experience was that like building relationships is so important and understanding the difference between like, as a consumer, I just want the world, right? I want, I want every restaurant to be trained in food allergies. I want accessible menus. Like there were so many things that I wanted, but as a restaurant, not all of those you're not able to do all of those in practice because there's a million other things going on. You have to worry about your bottom line. And so that's what working on the ground floor really taught me was what can the restaurant industry realistically implement in an easy way to help their customer, but also not take like a hit to their business, but actually improve their business. And so that's what was really important. And so I was able to learn that about the industry while also building relationships with people, which was really important because I think the restaurant industry definitely thrives off of relationships and people are going to listen to people that they trust and that they like.
Well, and I love it too. And you did so many things. I don't even know where to comment on first there. So number one, relationships in any business are always what's going to take you far. I think you also aligned with a group that was very aligned with your opportunity score already, right? So she already understood, that owner understood that this was a real deal. And now I think that you've got those smaller concepts that have bought in. It lifts MyMeal and yourself with all this validity of like, look at these hundreds of restaurants I've signed. Now we're going to catapult and go into the next tier of restaurants. I'm assuming through all of this as well, you've gotten really good at organic marketing through this, right? Because I know that you're blanketing all of Denver, but how has that strategy played out for you? And has it helped lift MyMeal kind of in the infant stages for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do a lot of organic marketing on our user side. The restaurant side, like I said, is more of the relationship building and reaching out directly. But for the user side, we've grown to almost 10,000 followers on Instagram. We're very close to 10,000. And that has all just been through posting about our partner restaurants, lifting up our partner restaurants, showing people where they can eat. And with that, we've been able to, build a text message community, a pretty large email community. And so my biggest thing with organic marketing is just providing as much value as possible. So we only have restaurants in Colorado right now, but we have followers from all over the nation, all over the world. And we have a ton of people on our wait list signed up for other cities. And so we just like to provide constant value to them on not only like our resource, but also how to eat out properly if you don't have our resource, or what are the things that you need to say to the server, or what is the server thinking when you're having that conversation. So I think what's really valuable about working in the restaurant industry is I now can provide that perspective to them. So everything that I learned about the industry
it's kind of flipping the script.
Yes, it's flipping the script, and now I get to kind of educate that to consumers. And so I use that as kind of my primary organic marketing method because I really enjoy providing value and education. And then, that builds trust so that when they see that MyMeal menu, whether that be in a restaurant or on our platform, that they trust that. And
they can take away.
Yeah. And obviously we can't guarantee anything as no restaurant can, but I think that's the really big competitive advantage that we have is people see our menu inside a restaurant and they're like, oh, Kayla's team made that and I trust Kayla. So therefore I have more confidence ordering at this restaurant. And it's just that like small mental health switch just by knowing that somebody with a food allergy, somebody with celiac has vetted that restaurant that really makes a difference for our users and our consumers.
I'm curious if you and again, just thinking out loud here, I'm curious if any of these thoughts came to you from your personal training background, because, and I can say this from my background in hospitality, now in my other endeavors not being hospitality, I think I take a level of the hospitality touch to everything I do. Because what I heard you just say is, hey, we're not in every restaurant yet. We're only in Colorado. But what I've done is I've flipped the script a little bit, and now we've also turned into an educational platform. So if the cities we're not in, I can also you can educate your consumers on what that guest might be thinking or the server might be thinking, and just to kind of put themselves out there. So I think that's a really unique way to look at it. Like, I want to be everywhere. I'm not there yet, but instantly you just went right back into the education model. So do you find that your foundation from training kind of carries you through a lot of endeavors that you do in life?
I absolutely do. I think that the core premise of working one-on-one with clients, particularly with personal training, is that, like, and you said this at the beginning, like, I never really cared about the money. Obviously, you need to make money for a business.
Yep.
But I always am a firm believer that if you are providing value to people, that the money will follow. And so 100%. I think that was like the big thing with personal training was like, when I was full in on personal training, like not doing MyMeal, my big focus was just providing as much value as possible. And so using like whatever tools I had, personal experiences I had to like really provide my one-on-one client with like the best experience possible to really uplift and improve their life. And so I do the same thing with MyMeal. Obviously, I'm not working directly one-on-one with a client. I'm working with, thousands of people now, but the same premise applies. You want to help uplift people and provide value to people because that's how you build trust.
And I think it also just gives you the systems of how to crush anything. I know for me, like if I've tracked my macros and I've gone from like being out of shape or recovering from an injury, and you just stay so consistent, like once you've built that discipline and that consistency, and it's like, I know I'm not there yet, but like, you don't have to talk to me about where I'm going to get. It's just a matter of time if I do X, Y, Z. And I find that for myself as well. The training classes when you and I met, I was doing those for free. And I've still started to pick up like just personal training clients for free here in Romania, even because I've noticed this of like something about consistently coaching for me in any field, just it gives me that total balance. I like to give something back, but I've noticed that sort of structure, even if I don't start my business plan off that way, eventually it ends up into some kind of service industry, So like, even if it's off with a product, I'm like, how can I really better? And I think it just comes from that foundation. So
I also think, just really quickly touching on like the actual fitness part of it as well, like to be an entrepreneur in general, like you need to be extremely persistent, and you got to take a million no's before you get a yes. And so I think like with my bodybuilding background and just like being involved in fitness, like you said, in general, that does really help you build that persistence to be able to keep doing that and keep going as well.
Well, and it's funny too, Kayla, when I started hosting these and all the business owners I know, and again, not every CEO's been in fitness, but a lot of startup guys and gals that I talk to, and even if I didn't know their background before, a lot of them have came from some form of discipline, whether it's personal training, athletics, but I think it gives you this system that you're able to apply to anything you do. And once you've kind of proven it to yourself, you just know how to push through the rest. And it gives you that confidence when things, because everyone knows in this world, like especially in business, man, everyone says you want to own one. Things almost never go as you plan, And I think just being so passionate as you are as well, right? If you don't have that passion, I can say this for myself, if I wasn't passionate about the things I would do, there's no way I could push through them on some of the weeks. And it's very rewarding, but what we're passionate about is what makes it rewarding. So I'm just curious, as you've done all these, what are some, I know you have the organic push, but what are some sales and marketing strategy? Because I think that you have such a unique perspective, like with your app, that I think you can people can gain benefits from this, from the retail world, from the hospitality, from the e-commerce. I think you've kind of fit into a special niche there. So I'm just curious about what other marketing strategies and what you've been doing to deploy and have the growth that you've had so far.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know we already touched on this a bit, but I think like building relationships has been the biggest advantage from a restaurant perspective. So basically how my product works from a revenue standpoint is pretty simple. And I definitely fell into this after trial and error because In the beginning, I just had no idea how I wanted to monetize the business. And so basically, like, we have our allergy menus that we create for all restaurants for free. We put our restaurants for free on the app. And then we have users pay a subscription to get access to that data. And then if the restaurant would like to use our material in their restaurant, so like they'd like to have a direct link to the filterable allergy menu in store, use the resources that we created together as training materials, then we do have packages for restaurants, but it's in a very organic way to sell, because I'm not, trying to force anybody into anything. I'm providing tons and tons of value up front to them. I'm still sending them customers. I still want them to be involved, want them to be a partner. But then over time, a lot of times we'll build that relationship, we'll build that trust. And then
as the trust is gaining.
Yep. And then if they, see the value in the resource, which a lot of times they do, then, to make it easier for their customers, they're going to want that resource available for them in store. So it's a very organic way to sell, and I don't really like to call it, like, it is selling, but I don't like to call it selling, because it doesn't really feel like that. It's more of just like an option of, here is the value that we provide. We're going to provide the value to you no matter what. But if you want to reap the full benefits of it, then, we're here for you to be able to do that. So that's kind of the way that I have fallen into selling. I'm not like a hard pusher by any means. I'm not going to go into a restaurant and like be that kind of person. And I think that's what restaurants have really appreciated about me, is that is not the person that I am. I'm not coming in just trying to immediately sell them something. My goal is to really provide them value before even offering up something as a package.
I think that's a great way to go about it. And I don't want to assume, but I am going to assume on this one, with your strategy, I would guess that there's probably consumers in other cities talking to other restaurants, trying to get your brand in there to help them as well, right? So it's kind of a great little full cycle you've got created there. If the consumers are telling the owners, hey, look at MyMeal, we need this here, we'd love to order out more with you. At what level is that happening with some of your clients so far? Is that with 50% of them, 20%?
Yeah, so we do have a pretty high referral rate, and usually how it happens, a lot of people ask me like how we know what restaurants to reach out to, and it is like fully user generated at this point.
I assumed, yeah.
Because we're still a really small team, so just like the capacity of restaurants we're able to reach out to is definitely like not at scale yet. And so we get like tons of people on Instagram or our text message community that will just like randomly reach out and be like, I went to this restaurant today, they did an awesome job, you should get them on the MyMeal app.
That's awesome.
So a lot of times we'll save that information and send it to the restaurant directly and be like, hey, we had a user reach out about your restaurant, we would love to get you on. So that's kind of how we approach it now, just because we have so many inbound users telling us about restaurants that we go to. So even though in the beginning I had to do a lot of research on, what restaurants should I even try to approach, now it's more so our users just tell us who to approach, and then we go call all of them and see who's interested in getting on.
Well, it's a beautiful thing with food too, because if people, and especially, again, not even talking just about celiac, but running restaurants for as long as I did, if you have a consumer that dines out with you, and a lot of times I tell my GMs this, my DOs, if you have a guest that eats at your restaurant 2 to 3 times a week and they call you and they're upset because something was made wrong, it was made wrong, because there's just folks out there that like, I wish I could eat from XYZ, but they don't have a food safe menu. So once a month, I'm going to go there and I'm going to talk to the restaurant owner and I'm going to make sure I'm safe. But I think it's a beautiful thing you guys have built, because people want this more. I love to be able to eat out. I love to be able to just dine with a clear conscience and not be worried. So I think if you guys continue on this route, I think it's going to continue to organically grow. How many people today have some type of food type allergy in the United States? Do you have that number off the top of your head?
Yep. So if you're just talking about food allergies and intolerances, there's 85 million people, which is 26% of our population. But if you factor in people that have celiac, Hashimoto's, EOE, which are all conditions that affect food, it's about 50% of our population, actually.
50% of the population in the fastest growing restaurant. Crazy. And just think about that for all of my followers too, because 3/4 of you are restaurant operators out there. Think about the revenue you're missing. So Kayla's going to be super passionate. I'm passionate too. I'll talk a little bit more about the fiscality of this. It's a big miss. And I think there's, like I said to you, Kayla, in the waiting room, I do have national brands that are starting to approach us about food conscious allergies. I'm still going to say the same thing I did to you 2 years ago. I think there's still, again, you've got to experience it from a mom and pop and some smaller independents. It's just some heavy lifting that needs to be done for the national level, but they're ready to do it. And I think the time is right as well, because again, I think we're going to see consumers dining out more post-pandemic. I think that's going to stay. I think, a lot of restaurants are starting to focus a lot on catering to get the meals to the house. And I think it's just going to continue to evolve. So. Yeah.
And an important point that I want to bring up with that, because I think there is definitely a misconception here as well, is just putting like GF or V or DF on your menu is not going to help somebody feel comfortable. And here's why. Because first, they don't trust that information. Second, there's not enough information to be able to trust that information. And so like having a online resource where somebody could see, is that dish contaminated? Can it be modified? Who is reviewing this? Is it, somebody that's in the nutrition field? Is it a dietitian? Those are all really important factors to consider. So I think a lot of restaurants are just copping out because it's easy by just like putting these symbols on their menus. And while that is definitely a really great step, and I commend anybody for even taking that first step to get there, what's really going to help instill trust and like promote you as an allergy-friendly brand is the cross-contact procedures you take, how you're transparently showing that information. And so that's what we really help you do, is we give you a platform to be able to display all of the information that somebody needs in order to feel safe. And so that's just an important part that I wanted to touch on, because I think a lot of restaurants are like, oh, I want to be allergy friendly, so I'm going to do this thing. But from a consumer perspective, like, information is king. The more information that you can provide to them, the more they're going to trust that resource. And so that's why people trust our resource, because we're just providing so much data that, like, theoretically, it's more information than your server knows. A lot of times it is, and that's why the servers love the menu in practice, because they don't even know the answers to all of the questions that our menu's providing. So I think that's a really, really important part to actually, getting in the minds of somebody that has a food restriction.
Or they're going back and they're getting it from the chef or the kitchen manager live in the shift. So Kayla, essentially as well, you're helping companies that either, if they have some stuff established, you're helping them showcase it better. Because I agree with you. There are some brands that do very well with cross-contamination and having protocols in. There's some national restaurants out there. Chewy's comes to mind. That's a scratch kitchen. They have really good protocols. But what I would say is they don't do a good job of, to your point, of showcasing to the guest of what they do. So if somebody wants to get in touch with you, Kayla, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you? Because I know there's a ton of restaurant folks that are going to want to know more about you. I'm going to link all your socials after this, but what is the best way for someone to get in touch with you? Say I'm a restaurant owner and I need help because I want to raise my sales 25% and do good by people, but the restaurants are going to call you to raise the sales. How do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so you can definitely shoot me an email. My email is kayla@findmymeal.io. So definitely reach out to me directly. Instagram, if that's your preferred method as well. It's mymeal.foodallergy. You can kind of see how we're catering to consumers there as well. So it's just like a good resource to look at. But email would definitely be the best method if you're trying to reach out about your restaurant.
And I'm going to drop all of Kayla's socials below. I'm also going to have the link to download the MyMeal app. Definitely someone you guys want to check out on. Kayla, I definitely want to have you back. I know we're running short on time, but I'm so excited to reconnect with you. I'm hoping that we can jump back in and we can both become a resource once again. But anything else you want to leave the Taking Chance guests with? Any last thoughts?
No, I think that's it. But thank you so much, Shaun. It was awesome to come on. And hopefully, this provided some value for people.
Oh, a ton of value. And I'm absolutely going to help ram you right into some of the national brands as well. This is going to be such good information. I appreciate you being on, Kayla. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Shaun.